Greetings, everybody. My name is Mrs. Denise Parker, and welcome to How to Land Your Dream Job series, where we're going to be discussing the aspects of hiring and getting hired through your resume building. Yay! I have my special guest here who's going to introduce herself, and you just go ahead and just say hello real quick. Say your name.
Hello, everyone. It's Michéla Walker here.
Wonderful, Michéla Walker. She's going to do a further introduction in a little bit, but just tell you a little bit about our organization. National College Resources Foundation has been around for over 25 years, helping those who are less than fortunate to get opportunities from college careers and beyond. And we're not just talking about those who don't meet the requirements. We're talking about from every aspect. We're trying to have you to have college access and also the access to opportunities such as internship and career aspirations. My role as Director of Internships and Careers is to help you guys find your way, find your passion and your pathways. So if you want to find out more about us, you can go to www.thecollegeexpo.org. You can also follow us on all social media platforms at NCR Foundation, So to get us kicked off, we're going to have a conversation today for you, those who joined us. I think you're excited. Take out some notepad and paper and let's get started. Go ahead, Michéla, take it away. See if you can share your screen. Make sure you have sharing rights.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can everybody hear me all right? All right, let's see. I'm gonna get to share my screen. Let's do this one.
Oh, perfect.
All righty, friends. All righty, friends. Well, thank you so much, Miss Denise, for having me. Oh, let me go back. I'm jumping the gun there. There we go. Thank you, everybody, for having me today. Again, my name is Michéla Walker. I am a 7-year human resources and executive assistant professional. And so I've only been doing this for 7 years. I'm a young professional, but I'm extremely equipped and knowledgeable about how the art of getting hired. And what I do and in my profession is outside of my career in working in executive leadership. I'm spending time mentoring and talking with professionals very much like myself or who are getting started and just, starting their journey in their professionalism. I'm teaching them and having these conversations or creating the arts around getting hired and getting their jobs and really reaching for that dream. And so I will say that one of the cool things about myself is that I have it's called my little superpower. And my superpower is that I have this ability to speak things into existence. And so today I'm going to teach you some really great strategies and some different things to kind of prepare for as you guys start getting prepared for getting hired, getting your resume, shifting some things, shifting your interview processing and how you're kind of entering in that capacity. And so if you have any questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. It's going to be interactive, so you don't have to have your camera on, but I will ask that you kind of jot some little notes or say some, I like that, or that's great knowledge in the chat. So I know that you're getting in, that you love it, and that it's good information. So right now I'm going to do a little bit of an icebreaker to get us started a little bit. So I want to know, drop it in the chat for me. What is your biggest fear of getting hired? What is your biggest fear in your resume or your biggest fear in interviews? It could be any one of those. Just drop it in the chat for me. You got about, let's see, a couple seconds to jot that down in the chat. I can't quite see it, so if somebody wouldn't mind
Yeah.
checking. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Drop it in the chat. What are we afraid of? What is our biggest fear in interviewing or our biggest fear with our resumes? Drop it in the chat for me.
Okay, saying the wrong thing. Age nearly 50.
Mm-hmm.
I answer the right answer. Ooh, these are good.
Yeah. Keep it coming. I need to know where you guys is headed at so I can give you some insights on those cool things.
Not interviewing very well.
Okay. Okay.
No Canadian exposure. Okay. Feeling
Mhm.
I interviewed well, but not getting the job.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah, great information, great information. So today I'm going to give you a little bit of bits and pieces today. I have some great jewels that I can give you guys as we're going to go out through this process. Again, if you have any questions or if you have any comments and you hear something that sounds good, I need you to drop it in the chat. That sounds good to me. So I know that I'm spot on and I'm helping you guys out here, okay? Alrighty, so we're gonna get started with resume building and the art of getting hired. This session is going to be equipping professionals with the skills for impressive resumes and building our memorable impressions during our interviews. So let me see if I can advance it. There we go. So for me in the chat, I need you to put it in the chat. Why is it important to make a good first impression? Why is it good why is it important to make a good first impression? Why is it good to make a good first impression? Why is it important to make a good first impression?
It's very interesting how you mentioned first impressions while we're waiting for these calls. Most people are shy and don't even realize they're that shy. Um,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
yeah, first impressions can be intimidating for some of
Yeah.
those not used to talking.
Oh, I
Okay.
can. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Yes.
Uh, it sets the tone. Interviewer can remember you. To be able to get a chance beyond my appearance. You can be remembered. That's good. That's good. These are all really, 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 really leaves a great impression. Those are all very, very great points. You're absolutely right. Yes. First impressions and what I will say with first impressions, and most people think the first impression is when you walk through the doors for your interview. I will even give you this note. Your first impression actually begins when you introduce yourself and submit in your application, right? Or if you connect with an organization on LinkedIn. I will say a lot of people will sometimes miss the mark even before they submit their application if they interact with an organization prior to an interview, and that's what their first impression was. So I will say that in dealing with first impression, yes, it's a visual appearance. Of course, dressing professionally and ensuring that our clothes are fitted and that we're looking aesthetically, we're looking the part is always really, really great and important. Your body language and how you present yourself, absolutely. That's maintaining that eye contact. I'm sure all of you guys know as professionals, maintaining eye contact, making sure that you're shaking hands correctly, and having great verbal communication. But I even think so that the first impression even starts before you even walk into the room for the interview. It starts with how you introduce yourself to the organization, whether that is submitting the application, whether that is connecting with the organization on LinkedIn, because they can see some of these things. And we'll get into that. We'll start, piecing that and unfolding that deeper into that. But I want to stress the importance of your first impression, because what I see first, or what I initially get to see first, is you. As somebody who's been in human resources for 7 years, I'm on both sides. So I'm on the spectrum right now where I'm applying, but I'm also being recruiting and doing human resources for 7 years. So I've been on the other side where I've seen these first impressions, and sometimes I get these impressions before I even meet this person during the interview. And so making sure that you are kind of capitalizing on what your social looks like, and those initial impressions before you even walk into the interview room, making sure that we'll get into that. So I'm gonna keep advancing, but just hold on to that thought, okay? So let's get into attire. We're gonna just start talking about our interview process, right? Let's talk about our attire and how we should look aesthetically when we are going to an interview or before we are making these impressions. And I really wanted to start here. I know it's kind of out of sorts. Normally, we usually talk about your resume first, but sometimes people don't see people see you before they see your resume, right? And a lot of cases that's exactly what happens. Before we even get to see what comes out of your mouth, we get to hear what comes out of your mouth, we see you, right? And so I want to get into that. What is appropriate attire for an interview? What is appropriate attire for walking into the business, even if you're just dropping off an application? A note that I want to leave you guys with, as well, is that when you guys, I know I shared a little bit about it, when you're even going just to drop off an application, people will see what you look or what you present. And sometimes that can be the determining factor of whether they will even give you a call back or hire you. So let's talk about it. All right. What is the difference between women who are dressing in business attire, and this is for my ladies that are in the chat. I want to know what is appropriate to bring in an application. What kind of attire should be appropriate to drop off an application? If you're dropping off an application at a business and you're actually like coming in and walking in. I know
I
we usually don't do that these days, but what is appropriate? I want to get into that a little bit. You can drop it in.
I see B as one of the number one selections,
Okay.
category B or selection B.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So for my ladies, and I'm gonna get into the gentlemen as well too, but for my ladies, I want to know. I mean, that's a great point. So for me, if I were to dress, and I think this it's different for every role. So I'm kind of making this a little bit generalized because of course you guys have different work environments, which certain outfits are acceptable. But what for me and for what I do as a human resource professional or an executive assistant professional, I'm working with senior level C-suite executives that are doing this type of work, or they're the face of the organization. And given that, because I am in that senior leadership role, or sometimes even second in command, I have to dress just as good or just as well as the CEO, not because I want to outshine or outdo them, but there's a standard here, right? And so I would say that for my team and even working within leadership, I require that my team has this level of attire, or that they dress in this magnitude, because it allows for the aesthetic of the team to still remain professional. And of course, we have our moments where we can relax and kind of be a little bit more casual. But I will say that if you're going into this environment and you're working as a C-suite executive, or you're working in those high level positions, this is appropriate attire. And this is across the board. I'll get into the gentleman. We can let me go to the next slide, and we can let's see. There we go. Let's talk about attire for the gentleman as well too. So drop it in the chat. What is acceptable to wear to if you're just dropping off your application? This is just dropping off the application. We already know what we're supposed to wear for the interview. What are we supposed to wear just to drop off the application? You could drop it in the chat for me. This is for men as well, but anybody can answer.
A or B has been A. It's kind of even, A and B.
Okay. Yep, we're getting a good combination here. Yes, these outfits are acceptable. Now, I will say again, depending on the environment in which you are working in, obviously we have to be mindful of what we are wearing. Okay. And so, with that being said, again, if you're working with these high level corporate, or in these corporate environments, you obviously have to dress the part. Now, for what we are trying to do, if you're wanting to stand out and you're wanting to be that individual that secures the job, right? Because we're talking about the art of getting hired, right? This is just to drop off the application. When you set the standard, or this is the initial interaction that we have with you, you are setting the bar extremely, extremely high for the rest of the candidates. And we want you to stand out. We want that because it allows our selection process not to be easier, but it allows for there to be a little bit of competition so that we can see, okay, if we bring this individual into this organization, we obviously know that they're going to dress and they're going to look the part. They're going to get the job done. But also, obviously, deeper into the interview process, we can obviously get to know about the individual, but initially we want to see that this person can look the part. We want to know that if we have them step in on behalf of the organization, or we have them fulfill a role, or step in and be even just for the CEO, because a lot of what I do sometimes requires for me to have to step into the role for the CEO. I have to be able to dress the part. I have to be able to look the part, even if I'm just going to a meeting, even if I'm just going to drop off an application. Your first impression starts from the very beginning when you're introduced to the organization, not when you're going to your interview. Okay. Is that a good information? Is that good information, everybody? I hope I'm dropping some jewels here. So, um, so yeah, so let's move on. Let's move on. Let's talk about, so we talked about attire. The next part about is our hair. Okay. What style of hair is acceptable in a work environment? I wanted to bring that up because I think that's such a controversial kind of conversation that people are having about what is acceptable in a work environment. Now, as a person, as a woman of color, I have different hairstyles that I like to choose from. Okay. I have different hairstyles that I like that I would like to choose from. And so usually when I go into these environments and I am acting, and again, this is just from my perspective, and but this is obviously very helpful for you because I would hope that even in your roles or in that capacity or in the work that you're working in, that you are progressing and growing within that company and becoming an executive or becoming a high level professional. That you would also understand that if that right now, if you have the ability to step in as the role of the CEO, that you should look aesthetically the part. Now, somebody told me once that I should always dress or should appear as if I was the CEO. And that's absolutely very, 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 very true. And I show up to work like that every single day as if I was. Now, I will say that your hair is a big factor of that. And everybody has different hairstyles and different things that they do, but just be mindful again of the environment in which you are in. I, for example, if you are working in fast food, it probably would be smart for you to not necessarily have your hair out and if it's easy for it to be accessible to the food, right? So think just being in that environment, making sure that the environment in which you are in is obviously conducive to what your hair is doing. Now, I have braids, sometimes I have short hair, sometimes I have long hair, sometimes I do color. But I also have to realize that in certain capacities, I have to also be mindful that I am representing the company and I am representing the organization. And so in most cases, no, I can't have fluorescent hair, okay? And sometimes I can't have neon hair because that's not again, I'm acting in the capacity as the CEO. If I were to be put on the spot today to be the CEO, would this look be acceptable and would I work the part? Would I ultimately be able to presume into that part? Okay. Is that good information? Does anybody have any questions about hair or attire so far?
No questions so far. Very good information. Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty, so that's about hair. Now let's get into the another one, another kind of point that I've been hearing is is this one. Tattoos and piercings. Are tattoos and piercings acceptable in a workplace? Drop it in the chat for me. Yes or no? I want to know where you guys' heads are with tattoos and piercings in a work environment. Is that acceptable? Kind of. Okay, what do you say kind of? Depends, but generally no. Depends on the job. Uh-huh. Okay, I love it. Everybody, okay, great. Great job. So everybody is essentially saying that it depends. Absolutely. So you can kind of see it. I can't see myself, but I have piercings. I have a piercing in my nose. I have lots of tattoos. And one thing I didn't get to highlight with you guys, which is why I wanted to kind of highlight this particular conversation, is because it does come up a lot about people who do have tattoos and piercings that are not what they call acceptable in a workspace. That's not necessarily true. I have piercings and tattoos all over. Now, I also do beauty pageants. So there are moments where I have to cover it up, obviously. But again, if we're trying to be and if we're trying to pursue these different high level leadership roles, we have to want to act the part. And I'm not saying that you can hide your tattoos, but you're absolutely right, you guys. It depends. It depends on the environment. It depends on the group in which you are in, because sometimes you can have all the piercings and all the tattoos and things that you have. But again, it's about the environment. But I will say that if you're going to a corporate environment, you obviously have to be mindful that tattoos and piercings, not that they're not acceptable, sometimes you just have to be a little bit more mindful in how visible that they are. So yes, there are moments where I do take my piercings out because I am representing the organization and I don't want, sometimes they say it's a distraction, but I feel like for me, in my case, I don't necessarily think it's a distraction unless you can see that I'm able, obviously, to deliver. So within that case, in order to remove these distractions, just don't let them be visible. And of course, if you're in an environment that allows you to have your tattoos and your piercings, by all means, have a ball, have a good time. So just be mindful of that, okay? And read the room with that, alrighty? Let's see. All right, so we're gonna shift over. This is now we they've already seen us. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about attire, piercings, tattoos, hair? Any questions that they have regarding that at all?
I have a question for our audience. Has anybody been discriminated against because of any of these issues? Do you feel like you were discriminated? Maybe discriminated is a harsh word, but you
Yeah.
felt discriminated because of your hair, your piercings, or tattoos. I'm just curious because we don't know anybody's background. Anybody's ever dealt with that? Okay, moving on.
Now, so I was gonna say I've never primarily have dealt with having tattoos and piercings and things
Hold on just a second. Yeah.
anywhere. And so I haven't necessarily dealt with any discrimination personally with that, but I've always been again very mindful because I don't want anything for me. I don't want anything to be a distraction. And I feel like again, as a young woman, um, I already combat a lot of other different distractions that people will say that I'm not qualified to be able to walk into this role or be able to fulfill those responsibilities. And I don't want to give them any other reason why I can't still present and still be able to work within a company. And so I remove those distractors or those things initially so that they have no excuse to not want to hire me or not want to bring me onto the team or not want to, right? Because it's about first impressions. And unfortunately, as a recruiter, I take first. I've had some of those first. Again, I've had a lot of interaction with first impressions before I've even met the individuals, and so not saying that um I won't say that you should. I mean, obviously you should be very very mindful of what you wear, but of course making sure that your first impression is an introduction into what you want to be within the company. You should always present yourself as your best self at all times and whatever that looks like. Okay. Let's see. Oh, somebody said something in the chat. I have tattoos and ear piercings, and I tried to keep more adult tattoos covered up and more. Absolutely, that's absolutely right. Yes, making sure that you're just being mindful. I don't think most companies mind if you have them, but obviously being mindful in which organization that you're representing because that is their criteria, and we don't want them to be any distractors or anything that would take away from the company or even just take away from who you are because sometimes those things might be essential or mean something special to you. And that's not always portrayed in the workspace. And so they don't always get that. So just being mindful of that initially before you even walk through the doors for that interview so that you can make sure that you get the part, you get the job. Okay.
Just to
Uh,
close out this particular part, I want to make sure that you guys know that it's really good to understand whatever company that you decide to, if you accept an offer or you work at a company, they have a bylaws, they have the rule book, they have a playbook of how they want their dress code to be. And read that book because they will present that in their HR presentation to you. And a lot of people don't pay attention to it. And by law, they have to present that information to you. So if you were ever discounted for a role or position based on look, read your handbooks. It will
yes,
most likely be in there. If your handbook does not display that information, that is something you can bring up to HR that you shouldn't have to take your body piercings or something because it wasn't in the handbook itself. They could have
absolutely.
told you, but it has to be written in order to do that. The reason why we're saying this is because we overlook just the little details and then you can get counted out or not level up because of something like this. And it's
Mhm.
very important to know all your rights in the roles, especially in today's climate. Okay?
Absolutely. And I was going to say, even before you even walk through the door for the interview, before you even secure, and I know that the handbook isn't necessarily visible, but sometimes companies will even put on their website their dress codes and some of their employee handbooks or so on and so forth. Some companies will actually do that. And so it shouldn't be a surprise to you if they tell you that you have to take all of that out, right? That should be a part of kind of the your own interview process. And again, we'll get into that when we talk more about interviews because I think most people think that when throughout the interview process that it's just kind of a one-sided thing that they're interviewing you, but you're also interviewing them. And it shouldn't be a surprise to you that they're not happy or they're not okay with tattoos and piercings to large magnitudes or what have you. And so it shouldn't be a surprise to you. And personally, I like to be in organizations where I have people that look similarly like me, whether they have tattoos or they have piercings or they have the same hair. I like being in environments and workspaces like that because obviously it allows us to be ourselves and be authentically ourselves. But it shouldn't be a surprise to you when you go to that interview or when you get hired for the job, then now they're asking you to do all of these things and that's not even included in the handbook, or you didn't look at those signs or those things prior to you accepting the offer for that organization. Okay, so make sure you do that beforehand. Alrighty. All right, so we're gonna move on out of first impressions into our resume components. Okay, let's get to talking about resumes. So I will say I love, that's my favorite part about doing what I do as a human resource professional because before even sometimes we see an individual in the room or see the individual, we get your resume, and that can be all we need to know in itself. Okay, and I know a lot of you talked about the fear of not getting hired, the fear of not hearing back, the fear of not not getting the dream job that you're looking for, right? And sometimes it's something as simple as what's on your resume. Okay, so the essential components of your resume should obviously include your contact information. It include your name, your full name, your phone number, your email, your LinkedIn profile. Now, even if that's just so, because I know nowadays we're doing electronic applications versus in-person applications or in-person resumes. I hyperlink mines, but I also provide that as an attachment to my resume so that people have the ability to just go right to it. I have a QR code on my resume, on one of my resumes that I have. Because I want people to not have any reason why they can't connect with me. So make sure you have your contact information, okay? The second one is your summary and your objectives. Explaining your career, your skills, in a brief, short little summary, okay? Your work experience, of course, your education should also be listed on there, okay? Now, I want to kind of highlight with the work experience, you don't have to put all of your work experience on your resume, okay? If you are tailoring your resume specifically to that career, you're changing it to fit your specific career, then your job or your work experiences should reflect those that work experience that you have, okay? Or the achievements that you have. So like for example, I worked in, let's see, I went from working for in higher education to working for Starbucks, right? In between time, I was doing different internships and making money here and there because again, I was in college, so I was making money doing little internships here and there. But they weren't really like big things that would have shaped what I'm doing currently. And so, of course, I don't have a 6-page resume that has every single thing that I did, every single work experience, every single job that I did from the time that I started working. No, it doesn't have that. It should highlight, or your resume should highlight the career in which you are pursuing. So, for example, I say that I'm an executive assistant slash human resource professional. Therefore, I have two separate resumes. I have an executive assistant resume that shows all and highlights all of the amazing things that I did within being an executive assistant. But then I also have a resume that is specifically tailored to all of the human resource work that I've done. If I'm pursuing a job that does both, then I have to create a completely separate resume. So it is work, right? It is work if we're going after this dream job, okay, you guys? So I will say that you have to have different resumes. I have about 4 or 5 different resumes because I'm so involved in all of the things that I have to do. But make sure that in general that your resume should reflect the career in which you are pursuing. And the same thing for your education. I know people that have put certifications for like random things, or I've seen on resumes people will put certifications for random things that do not necessarily fit in what we're looking for. And so it kind of throws the resume off a little bit with with making it kind of cohesive and kind of making it make sense. And so it doesn't give us very good insight. And so I will say things like that are very important. With certificates, with your education, those kinds of things we throw resumes away essentially for, because we are specifically looking for some of those keywords and some of those key things that will help kind of push your resume to our faces. And I will say nowadays, if you guys aren't aware, AI is taking over the world. AI is being used so much in the recruitment process that if you don't have some of these essential resume components, they're already being eliminated. Okay. And that's why I say, like, even with the summary and objective, when you're briefly describing like your skills or your career things, within that, these AI systems will scan your resume to find those keywords and find those key things so that they essentially get pushed through to my desk or they get pushed to these hiring managers' desk. If that resume does not include some of these essential resume components or those certain keywords or those certain key things, then obviously we don't get to see it. Even though you're a great applicant, you could be an amazing candidate, but unfortunately, it didn't get to our faces because it didn't fit some of these essential resume components. So obviously, you guys make sure that you guys have these things within your resume so that we're obviously able to get that to our desk, because sometimes we don't even see you and we want to see you. We do want to see the great talent in which we have. Okay. Does anybody have any questions regarding these essential resume components? And does anybody want to add on to maybe some of these
Yeah,
essential resume
add on to you
components?
guys for this. As an internship and careers director, I'm also as a recruiter too. I'm thinking like a recruiter for your aspect. When we say hyperlink, you guys understand what that is. For those who do understand, thumbs up, great. Hyperlinking, just to reiterate that, is to be able to hover over your digital resume and be able to click on your LinkedIn page with the mouse cursor. Click on your email address with the mouse cursor. It's very important that you guys understand the importance of being accessible easier. That lets the recruiter know that you're tuned in to how this world is moving. If you have to, we have to write it down or copy and paste, you are not tuned in and the person is not going to be hiring you. They want somebody who's efficient and thinking very thoroughly of how they're placing or putting their resume together. And it's that little detail that does matter. When we're talking about summary of objectives with brief descriptions that describe you yourself and your career goals or your career objectives, some of the keywords I'm going to put it in the chat before we close out. I'm trying to copy and paste now. I'll give you a whole list of keywords, but use your AI systems. If you can't figure it out, upload your resume in or upload a stanza in your resume to kind of tweak it a little bit to make it sound more professional related to a role. One of the key things that I tell all my students who come to any of my classes, workshops that we are teaching on the road or in a virtual session such as this, I tell them to pull the job description on 3 different levels. You'll pull a job description of what you really want to do on an entry level, or an internship or a fellowship or something of that level. You'll pull a job description on a mid-level position, and you'll pull a job description on a senior or an executive level. Whether it's management roles or whatever, just typical roles that you want to go and scale up to. Does this make sense? Once you pull that job description, that's your roadmap. That's your roadmap, what you want to do to in order if you're a college student entering into the workforce for the first time, if you're graduating college student or you're graduating a professional from a skills trade position, you got a certification, you got a license, and now you want to apply to a particular role. You want to be able to look at that roadmap so that you can actually tailor make your life, your resume to meet those needs. So when you're going to work for quote unquote something that's just getting you to pay those bills, okay, you got that little side hustle to pay those bills, you're gonna work it like you're a manager. You're gonna work it
Right.
because you want to be a manager. You want to
Yeah.
work it. You want to work it so that people can say, wow, now I can give you a letter of recommendation because, oh, I'm so happy that you're advancing in your life. You work this job for a certain amount of time so that you can have your needs met, but now you're moving on to that. You got that call from Google, you got that call from Northrop, you got that call from wherever you want to go. Does this make sense to you guys? You have to always think that it's just a position at the moment. we're always looking for that great next to find that career pathway.
Yeah, like Monday to Monday.
All right. Anybody else? Does anybody have a question? Yes, you will have access to the recording. Yes, you will. But I'm gonna put it in the chat. Yes, that makes sense. Wonderful, wonderful. If you guys have any feedback, please, put it in the chat. If you want a question, raise your hand.
Absolutely. No, you were spot on with that. That was perfect. And I was actually going to give you guys a quick example because I have one here on the presentation. So, just specifically going back to this is an example for the objectives in your summary, right? The beginning portion of your summary. As a hiring manager, we do not have time to go through 1,000 and 10,000 applications that come through our system, which is why we have to utilize these AI or these online systems to help kind of filter those things through. And you're absolutely right when you were talking about the fact that you have to have some of those key things and those key points in order to make sure, because we don't see that. And sometimes our technology will wean you out before we've even gotten the opportunity to read it ourselves. And so I've worked in both capacities where I've had the ability to go through all of these or go through resumes, but then I've also been on the side where I've had to utilize a tracking system or utilize a recruiting system that, I mean, I've even had people that I knew were applying that my online system kicked out. I knew they were qualified, but their resume did not push through. Their resume did not reflect what, as an organization, we're looking for. And I'll give you guys a little secret how we do this. As a human resource professional, what we do in some of these AI systems is, like you said, we actually just put the job description inside of these systems or put what we're looking for as an organization into these systems. And then your resume is supposed to match or tailor or almost kind of connect with what we've already put in the job description. And that's what the technology system will utilize in order to accept those resumes or decline those resumes. And so that's, I think, also why a lot of you guys might be experiencing some of that, because either you're putting too much on the resume or it's just kind of too much going on. And of course, I know this is a general master class. So of course, if you want to connect with me after this, we can obviously talk, one-on-one, do some one-on-one with resumes. But I will say that with working with your resume, you have to make sure that you highlight these key points. And here's an example. Michéla Walker is a results-oriented human resource professional with over 7 years of experience, specializing in operational excellence, high quality performance, and enhancing cross-functional collaboration. Straight to the point. I think if I was looking at that, I'd be like, okay, this gave me a little bit about how long they've been doing this, a little bit of what they can produce. And that's my initial connection with the person when I see this first initial sentence or with this compelling statement. Okay. And that even it's called I will say a compelling personal statement for both your summary that's on your resume, but even your cover letter. Because sometimes I will attach my cover letter on top of my resume, and most people do that. So before you've even gotten to the resume part, we're looking at this letter, right? And then we have the resume. So make sure that these personal statements reflect and show all of these things that you can do in a short period of time. We have to be able to read it. So it has to make sense, has to flow, has to connect, and it has to be straightforward so we can get to the meat of why we should hire you, right? All righty. We're going to advance also to the highlighting the relevant skills and experiences, right? So back to what we were talking about, those technical skills, those soft skills, those achievements. On my resume, I have a particular portion that just highlights my technical skills, and I have a part that also highlights my my soft skills and some of those things that I've done. And what I will say is because, again, your resume should only be, we say these days, we try to keep our resumes to about a page, maybe two max. Sometimes three, depending on where you're working or what you're doing. Sometimes three at the absolute max, but between a 1 and a 2 page resume, okay? Because again, we have to get through yours and we have to read it. We have to read it to make sure that we're not passing anything or that we're not misjudging, misleading, we want to make sure that we're reading this information, but we have a short period of time to do that. So making sure that you're highlighting those strong technical skills, because that's very imperative for what we're trying to do, making sure that that aligns with the the job description, okay? Or the job posting, okay? Making sure that you're communicating what those soft skills are, because knowing that you're a good communicator, knowing that you're good with teamwork, knowing that you're a good problem solver, that you have great learning agility are all of those great components that we can absorb from you quick, fast, in a hurry, and that we're able to utilize and we're able to see visually. And obviously your achievements, okay? Um, let's see. Okay, does anybody have any questions relative
Go
to
on.
yeah.
Let's go back one. I just posted in the chat a list of relevant skills and experience words that you guys could use. This is what I want to say to you about these words, because if you're not using them on a daily basis to describe who you are, putting it on a resume doesn't qualify you to use that word. You want to make sure you incorporate this verbiage in your day-to-day life so you be more comfortable when it gets in front of an interviewer. You'll be able to express yourself with ease and flow. When you wait to prepare for anything, the day of, the week of, or when you're applying, you're already behind. So you want to start now. This is what I tell my younger people who are, in high school. It's the same thing. It's okay that you guys are learning it at a basic level. It's good to go over the basic steps, because when we get a little too advanced, sometimes we miss a lot of details, and the details are that matter. That's what makes you stand out, that you don't forget the details. And go back to that last slide real quick. This is very important. Michéla, you are nailing it, and I'm just coloring in the lines for you. Crafting a compelling personal statement. I love how this sounds, but guess what? Why don't you do that now? Don't wait till you have to get hired for a particular role. Craft that story that you want to tell the world. Make it about yourself in your LinkedIn description. Like when you have your LinkedIn profile, you can go to your LinkedIn and you can put your name and all your contact information and where you went to school, what's your educational background, what's your work experience background. But in the about section, you can craft a personal statement about yourself. This is a good way to express to the world what you're looking for to advance, and it can also start you on your journey to figure out what you really want to do. We have a question real quick. Miss Wright, Miss Coleman, you want to
Thank
come off?
you, Lafista. Thank you so much for both you guys. So I have two questions. Well, one question and a comment. This came right on time. It's so interesting. I'm going through right now a bit of a transition. I'm in a leadership program. You can hear me?
Yeah,
Okay, I want to make sure. Yeah, I'm in a leadership program, and during my 360 feedback process, they were telling me that it would be great for me to start just interviewing, regardless whether I decide that I want to move to another position or just for the skill set in itself. So I just recently updated my LinkedIn page. So I'm wondering, with the example, are you supposed to put your first and last name when you're writing out the statement? Like you're talking about yourself in the first person? Or should you just be writing out the statement without including your first and last name? Because your name is already at the top of the LinkedIn page. So I'm just trying to figure out, even though I see in the example, she has her first and last name.
Right.
yeah.
So you're saying in first person versus third person?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead, Michéla.
Yes. So I was actually getting ready to tie this into what I was saying. So yes, you're absolutely right. So in my LinkedIn profile, it doesn't say Michéla Walker it is supposed to be in third person. So I'm glad. Thank you so much for even just bringing that component out, because yes, on my LinkedIn it does say results oriented human resources professional. In my what is it? In my cover letter, it obviously talks about it in that capacity, but that's why I was saying that your compelling personal statement should also it should reflect essentially what's happening in your cover letter, that's happening in your summary as well, your sentence summary. And it also should reflect when when an interviewer asks you, tell me about yourself. Does that make sense? Or was that,
That makes sense.
yeah, so it
That
should,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah, so it should all attach. So in a sense, you should have, yes, Michéla Walker is a results-oriented human resource professional in your cover letter, right? So y'all jot this down on your cover letter. It should be in third person. In your summary, that should say directly, result-oriented human resource professional with over 7 years of experience. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. This has been so great. I
Oh, you're
appreciate you
good.
both. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I was going to touch on even the fact that I talked to you, or I was saying about the tell me about yourself question, because oh my God, that is the worst question people get. They feel like they hate that question so much. They tell me about yourself. And let's I was gonna just advance because that is I think that's our next one. Yeah. So the tell me about yourself question, your cover letter. So believe it or not, it's a full circle moment when you're dealing with your resume and your cover letter, because it all should also then reflect in your interview as well. And your resume and your cover letter kind of outlines, as well as your summary, are outlines of what you're going to talk about in your interview. So when she was talking about don't use these big words in your resume, and then when you get in front of your interviewer, you're using these small words, that is spot on. You have to make sure that it's cohesive across the board. If you're using things like executive or quantitative or all of the words that she put in the chat, if you're using all of these different words but you're not utilizing that in your everyday vernacular, of course it's going to be difficult to be able to prove that. When you're in an interview, you're basically trying to prove to this organization that you're capable of fulfilling this responsibility. But this is why we interview, so that we can see you in different components. What your resume shows us how well you write. Okay, your cover letter shows us how well you communicate. Your interview shows us how well you giving us the feedback in which how you can contribute to the organization. And so they all have to make sense. And one of the things that I found within reviewing resumes is I will get people who will provide me with these resumes, but then they're not saying the same information that's listed in their interview. And so when I'm asking about, okay, well, on your resume, it says that you do organizational, you know how to maintain organizational behavior, and you have no idea what I'm talking about, then obviously I'm aware that you probably used some type of systems. You're not familiar with what's going on with your resume. So you should be just as familiar with your resume and your cover letter, because that's your outline for when you're going to go into your interview and communicate. So, like for example, if you were to tell me about yourself, because this is one of the number one questions, and I'm going to just use this as our example question, right? I start off by saying, yes, of course, thank you so much for this opportunity to interview with you. I am a 7-year human resource executive assistant and human resource professional. I graduated with a degree in business management. And of course, now I'm going to start telling them about who I am. But what did I say in this? Where was that? This one. I'm a result-oriented human resource professional with over 7 years of experience, right? Now I just created what I'm going to say in my interview. So make sure that you use your interview almost as your script. We're talking about the art of securing our dream job. Your script is your resume. Your script is your cover letter. I'm not saying memorize it verbatim, but the process in which you advance throughout your cover letter, or you advance through your resume, where you talk about your experience, where you talk about your work history, where you talk about your education, that's almost how you want to go along with answering this interview question. Tell me about yourself. Okay. So that should be your outline. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Miss Coleman, go ahead.
Maybe I think it was probably still up. But while you're there, it's okay. I'm gonna let you continue on, but I want to add something to this because our interview questions are really interesting. This is where, like Michéla is saying, Ms. Walker is saying, that you can get tripped up a lot. Now, the interview questions may not be this basic where it says, tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? Why do you want this job? That is already a given, but they might trip you up. For those who are more technical and going into technical roles, they might ask you to demonstrate something physically, like coding, or do something right on the wall, something, or draw something. If you're an architect or if you're a designer, they might ask you to sketch out a design and tell us how to, they might give you a puzzle to work out. It's like something that's going to really get your technical skills in play. But I want you to be prepared to learn about the STAR method. I don't know if you guys heard of the STAR method, but the STAR method stands for situation, task, action, and result. It's a structured approach to these questions. is dealing with behaviors, is dealing with how you respond to things in an actionable way. For example, it's a way to answer behavior interview questions by structuring your response into 4 parts. The situation is a representation of describe the context of the problem that you're facing. So they might ask you a question like, tell me about yourself and how did you, handle yourself in this particular role when it came to the deficit and the loss in this economy. They might give you a specific reason and respond to. Like they want you to respond to something that's very specific. And you're going to have to be able to, from your resume, what you expose in your resume, be able to pick out something from your job descriptions, from your work experience, and give an example of that. In task, explain your responsibilities in that situation. It's all relevant to the same. What you started with is kind of what you're finishing in the STAR method. In the action, describe the steps you look to address the situation. They want to know the steps, the process on how you solved it. When you're answering these things in these kinds of ways, they know that this person is knowing what they're talking about, not just putting some things down on a piece of paper and just thinking it will stick. In the results part, you're sharing the outcomes of all the things you just said in the STAR method relating to that one thing they asked you. So it's not like random things. It is related to one thing. So I'm going to put this in the chat, but you can go to YouTube University and look up the STAR method, and you can look up examples of that, of the STAR method. And you can even ask like, tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What do you want this job to be in a STAR method type of questioning? Okay. Michéla, is that helpful for you too?
No, that was good. That was good. That was good. And I was gonna say, even just a lot of people take the tell me about yourself question literally. And so what I will tell you guys is to avoid when asking this or when answering this particular question is to stay away from those things that are not on your resume and that are not adding to what's happening in the interview or what the role that you're pursuing, right? And so for example, I was obviously told when I first started interviewing and being a human resource professional and just interviewing period, I was told that you shouldn't necessarily start talking about where you're from when you answered this particular question. Like you don't say, yeah, well, I'm from da 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 da. But as I got older, the reason why I had to even explain that was because on my resume was, of course, during the pandemic, a lot of us were moving or a lot of us were shifting. I was in school. So I had to go from living in Texas to moving back to Washington and then coming back. But my major key roles were in these different states. And so on my resume, it reflects that I moved from this state to this state, from this state to this state. And until I actually, and in most cases, because I don't get the opportunity to interview with people, and that's what's on my resume, I have to explain that somewhere, somehow, it's not that I'm inconsistent with working with an organization. It's the fact that this is what took place. I'm originally from this place. So now when I do have the opportunity to do these interviews or when I do have the opportunity to write these summaries, I'm saying this is why, like not this is why, this is when I went to Seattle or went back home during the pandemic, but I'm including that in my conversation now professionally. So when I say tell me about yourself, that's what I'm getting at. You're supposed to be spending that time highlighting the most key important parts that are irrelevant to the job and relevant to your resume. So make sure you are staying away from those things that don't highlight good key things about who you are, about the job that you're pursuing. The second question is, what are your strengths? And I should have put the other question that a lot of people could, because we're so good with talking so great about ourselves, right? I should have put, what are your weaknesses? I think that's, for some people, that is one of the hardest questions. And in doing specifically with pageantry, I found this skill. I didn't even learn this in the workspace. I learned this in pageantry, that when we are highlighting what our weaknesses are, you should always spin those negative things into a positive, specifically when you're interviewing, because we want to know that even in times of controversy or even in times of difficult situations, we want to know that you have the ability to navigate getting out of that or working with a team of people to get through whatever that situation is. So say somebody asked me the question, well, what is your weakness? My weakness is sometimes I dive 10 toes deep into my work. And sometimes I take that will take away from what I have to do personally at home. And I'm learning every day that yes, work is an amazing thing. Building my career is an amazing thing. But sometimes I just have to give myself a break and spend more time investing. And that's when I'm now that as I'm a professional, I've learned that amazing skill. And I think that now I'm able to have great balance in learning how to make time for myself, but also making time for my career. You see what I mean? I spun it to make it to a positive, even though it sounds kind of like a negative question. And that's for all of your negative questions, because you might we call them negative questions, but they're the questions that they want to essentially just see how well you're doing in times of difficulty or in times of controversy, because that does happen in a workspace. So make sure that when you're being asked those questions, that you're mindful of those key things or those things to say. And of course, that has to reflect into your resume. So pull some of those things from within your resume that you've already written. You should know your resume like the back of your hand, okay? My favorite question, number 3, why do you want to do this job? I get that question all the time because my resume is so great. And sometimes I will go into interviews where they feel like I'm overly qualified for the role, but I'm also like, no, I'm not overly qualified. I need more growth. I still have areas of professional development that I want to provide. And so that question gives me the opportunity to express that I still have areas of growth that I want to develop. There are still places that I want to grow. And I think that within this organization, it can provide me that. And vice versa, I can provide the organization this. So when you're answering the question, that particular question, it's a trick question, people say, but really you should show the enthusiasm and understanding of the role and what you can contribute to it, and what you can contribute to the organization, and vice versa, and what the organization can do for you. Okay, is that good information? Let me know if you guys have any questions relative to these type of questions. If you want to, is there a question? Because I can open the floor for that. Is there a particular interview question that you guys are dreading answering? Like, what kind of question do you guys have? Drop it in the chat. I'm gonna advance, but I'm gonna help you guys through that when we get to our final question and answering time, and I can help you navigate that. Okay.
While you next slide, just want to add something. When you're researching the why you want this job, I mean, when you're telling them why you want this job, you also want to research the company. You don't want the job because the money. You want the job because you want to work there and want to help build their mission and their brand and all the things that they have going on. You believe in their company. There's 2 things that I say most importantly that most people miss out. They don't go to their website and read their mission statement and see their impact reports and research the company on their website and see what their branding is, because that's important. You can have you can have a great conversation, a tennis match when you in an interview when you're talking about the company, all the things they're doing, and also watching the news and reading the news related to the company. See what they're doing in the community. If you want to have a job that has social impact while you're working for a Fortune 100 to 500 company, that's great. But you also would have social impact. They have corporate social responsibility roles. What are they doing to help the community that you representing and stuff like that? Maybe that's something of importance to you. You possibly want to learn what's happening in their finance news, because if these are big companies, you can pay attention to CSNBC, Bloomberg, all these different things, because it will actually see if this is a really good company to work for, or they might be laying off in the next few weeks to a month because of the downturn in the economy. So you put all your eggs in one basket, and then they're shutting it down for they're furloughing or whatever you want to call it. So keep that in mind. Pay attention to the news. Read their websites. Read the news that's the chatter that's about them, not the social media only. Pay attention to the real hard, concrete facts, not opinions. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I was going to get into that a little bit later, even about you hit the nail on the head, but I'm glad you said that because this is important for this right now. We are in a space where we have to do our research relative to the companies that we want to work for. It's not just about them interviewing us, we are interviewing them as well. So even though they're asking us, tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? Why do you want this job? I tell every person when I do my one-on-one consultations relative to resume building and interviewing, I tell my clients all the time that you also have the ability to ask these questions when they open the floor up to you. I want to know, why did you pursue this role that you're in, right? Because we want to know from the direct supervisors. We want to know from the people that work for the company. I don't know how many times I've walked into some work environments where I was not prepared for what I was going to experience because I didn't ask these types of questions to my interviewer as well. So you just know that you have that ability to ask these questions relative to the organization and the company, even outside of your research, because you also want to know that the people that are interviewing know what they're doing here, and if the environment is going to be conducive to what you want and your goals and your dreams within this organization. Okay, so ask the questions as well. Alrighty. All right, so then the next one, we're gonna get into talking about social media, friends. Let's get into it. This is one of the biggest things that before we even get to the interview, that I am, yes. So I am highlighted as the corporate stalker because within some of my organizations, because I go on social media. I spend time going through my applicants' social medias. I have done that because I've been in some environments where we've hired some people that were not really great examples of the organization. Now, granted, what you do outside of the organization is your business, understandable, but if I hear that, if I see on your social media that you're bad mouthing an organization, or if I see that you're on TikTok posting about how terrible a particular organization is, how do I know that how do I know that that's not something that you would do when you come to my organization? So I go on LinkedIn, I become friends. I not necessarily to my candidates, but we go through social medias. I mean, there are literal organizations that have social media departments for recruiting. I mean, I've hired people that were specifically hired on to do social media recruiting and looking through people's social media. So number one, they have seen you before you have seen them. Okay? They've seen you before you've seen them. Now, you might have seen the organization and decided to apply, but most of us have gone on your LinkedIn. Most of us have gone on your social medias to see what you're doing. Because I'm clean. I've cleaned my social medias. I've always had a very clean social media from the time I've ever had social media. But my social media also reflects in my LinkedIn. My LinkedIn looks like my Instagram. My LinkedIn looks like my TikTok. My LinkedIn, all of my stuff look professional and well kept, because I want to know that if at any given time an organization decides they want to go look me up, that they're not seeing inappropriate things on social media, that they're not seeing bad examples of me, because there have been times where I've hired people and I did not look at their social media and they were completely different on social media than they were in the organization. Okay, so make sure that you are cleaning up your social media. Nothing is private. Okay, I'm gonna say this again. Nothing is private. No, nothing is private on the internet. Nothing is private. So if you've posted it, or if it's out in the organization or out in the open, one, I will say transparency is key, because I have had candidates that I have hired and they were going through the onboarding process and something happened where they've accidentally gone viral, and they were transparent enough to bring that to my attention. So it wasn't a bad thing, but because they were transparent with me and we were able to have that conversation, it didn't affect the business. But nothing's private. We get it. We see it all. Okay. I've even had circumstances where I've had information come directly to me from random people that were like, hey, do you know so and so? I saw that they were on your LinkedIn and I just saw them at so and so's house. You know what I mean? So nothing is private. So make sure that you're cleaning up your social medias. Okay. And make sure that again, corporate stalker. Make sure that you are adding your hiring managers and your businesses on LinkedIn. I know that sounds crazy, but when I tell you I'm a corporate stalker, if I'm applying for a job, I am going and I'm looking for the hiring managers. Why? Because I want them to see my LinkedIn. I want them to see how engaged I am and how well I can be of support to their organization. I want them to see me. So I go and I add them, and I will not on personal. I go on LinkedIn specifically, but again, all of my stuff is attached. So because I have a cohesive, and I have my social medias and everything are all connected, I'm able to provide a good image of myself, and I'm transparent. I don't have anything to hide on my social media that I wouldn't want any of my close family to see. So I make sure that even in those capacities, I'm being respectful because they are going to see it. And they're going to look. We're going to look, okay? So go ahead, do it. I'll even say I go to the extent I'm gonna give you guys a little hidden gem. So write this note down. When I apply for a job, I know I told you guys I add the hiring managers on LinkedIn, but I also message them too. I message them and I go and I say, hey, so and so, it's so glad, I'm so thankful that I got the opportunity to connect with you. I wanted to know, I just recently applied for this job. I wanted to know if I would make a great candidate for this role, and I just wanted to connect with you. What bad does that do to connect with someone, right? What bad does that do to not want to connect with a person who could potentially be hiring you for the job? I've gotten my some of my candidates call them corporate DMs. They say I've gotten corporate DMs. I've had corporate people slide into my corporate DMs, but it's because they're eager. And I am most likely to hire a candidate who is eager for a role because they want me to see that they're doing these great things and they want me to see the contributions that they can bring to it. So yes, do it, do it, do it. Make sure you can message them and add them and network with them, communicate with them on LinkedIn. We love to see that as recruiters. We love to see that. Okay. Does anybody have any points regarding that at all? Regarding social media, nothing's private. Clean them up.
And you guys, if you guys need help with your social media, we're here to assist you with that. It's not easy to figure out what you should put or how you should do things, but I will teach you some tips about LinkedIn though. I get about 60 job alerts about what's out there, daily. So there's plenty of opportunities. They may not be to your liking or may not be in your neighborhood, it may not be in your price range, but there's stuff that's out there that can get you to the next level. You can search in the jobs portion and type in some keywords that relate to some roles that you're looking for, some industries that you're looking at. And if you keep searching and like or save, the algorithm starts sending things to you on its own. The more you do it, the more they send to you. You can do it across different sectors, different industries, so that you have transferable skills, and those transferable skills can go into healthcare, they can go into business, they can go into communications, they can go into construction. You have transferable skills, okay? You remember you have multiple resume styles, so therefore you can get hired in various different positions based on your experience overall. So you want to kind of toggle your LinkedIn to find those different opportunities. And if you want to really stand out, this is one of the key things that's pretty fun in this Gen Z kind of environment. Use TikTok to do like a personal statement, like, "Hi, my name is Denise Parker, and I am da 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 da." And it could be like your representation to the world, because there's a lot of companies that need to stay current, and they need to know if the people that they're hiring, no matter what age they are, they're current with today's environment, so they can keep their company current and branding in today's environment. The best money is that new money, and that's that kid money, that money that's coming in and parents are giving it to their kids and then going to Nike and buying some more stuff. So we want more younger people, buying our product. How do we do that? We need to appeal to them. So you find ways to appeal to the recruiter. And sometimes standing out in social media, you're not calling the company out by name, but you're just saying, this is who I am, and you can even put a hyperlink on your resume. Here's my TikTok with my introduction of who I am. But make sure, again, like Michéla is saying, is everything else is cleaned up, because they will source it. They have lawyers, they have people who actually they search for this type of data just to make sure that they are all running in the same feng shui. Hopefully that's helpful for you guys.
Absolutely. And I want to add one more thing to that as well. And I was going to show it to you guys at the end, but I mean, because I know we're crunched for time, but I do want to tell you guys that I have what's called a portfolio. And I know some companies will ask you for a portfolio that includes like work history, work samples, that kind of thing. My portfolio literally is like a website. And I'll show you at the end, but really, I want to show you because this is what has stepped up my game in really securing my role or my dream job is the fact that I have a portfolio, but it's a site that it basically is my resume broken up into different sites, and it showcases all of the amazing things that I've done. So I'll get to that later. It's a part of my like little social media snippet that I talk about because that is an extension. It's also an extension of you, and it could be something that can really step up getting you hired or getting you that dream job that you're looking for. So I'll show you guys that at the end. But I have a couple more slides. I'm gonna move through them really, really quickly because I know we're crunched for time. But let me get to that. When you're in your interview, make sure you are practicing communication techniques, making sure that you're speaking clearly, that you're articulating, and making sure that you're listening to the interviewer. I take notes during my interviews because sometimes when you're nervous, I forget the question that's being asked because I'm rambling. I'm trying to get all of this information out. So I will say write down these questions even in your interview so that you're practicing effective communication, but you're also you're practicing what's the word, comprehension, so that if you do have a lot that's going on at once, you're able to actively take those key points and make sure that you're taking accurate notes. So always take notes even in an interview, and you can tell the interview, hey, I'm also taking notes. It shows how inquisitive you are. It shows how interested you are even just in the position that you're willing to take notes and kind of be aware of what's happening within the business and really get to know more about the organization. Making sure that you're being mindful of your nonverbal cues, maintaining great eye contact, positive body language. I know that it's a lot more difficult working in like virtual settings. I know that this is virtual. I do a lot of interviews online and virtually. So making sure that your environment is conducive, make sure, our pets are not running around, kids aren't screaming when we're doing interviews, that we're in a good space, making sure that we're keeping eye contact. I wear glasses because sometimes I can't see here. Sometimes I'm looking, because I'm taking notes or what have you. And so my glasses help me kind of remain or give a level of focus. And so these are my focus glasses. But make sure that you're keeping eye contact and that you're keeping a strong positive body language because we look for that. Even though you're at home, we want to know that even if because now environments are even hybrid. We want to know that if you are even going to work remotely or work hybridly, that you still would remain with the level of professionalism that we need to support and highlighting the organization. Okay. Um, Again, self cultivating, making sure that in your interview process that you believe in your skills, you believe in who you are. Prepare for your interviews. I had an interview today and I've been preparing for the interview for weeks. I've been preparing, spending time going over my questions, making sure that I talk to myself a lot when I'm preparing for interviews, and making sure that I'm getting the answer across, but doing it within a timely manner. One of the things that I didn't share this with you, but jot this down in your interviews. As recruiters or people that are listening even just to interviews, because we interview so many people, sometimes our attention span gets cut off, and so we have a short amount of time to be able to get this information to you without it being too much or without overwhelming. It should be a sense of a conversation, is how your interview should be structured, but you have to prepare. You have to practice that. You have to practice sustaining that conversation or really talking about yourself, because it's weird, it's awkward talking about yourself sometimes, but you have to practice that. You have to practice that, and then of course reflect. I spend time even in my interviews talking with my interviewer about ways that I can perfect my interview style or perfect what I did. Or even after, if I did not get the job, I will ask, hey, is there anything within this process that you can give me great, feedback or great information regarding this interview process? Okay. And so that's what I do. That's just what I do for me in cultivating that professionalism, because if I'm not getting this job, I know for sure that I'm going to get the next job based off of what I learned from the last interview. Okay. So making sure that you're staying on top of that. And then in closing, here are our last hidden gems. Of course, I talked about creating a profile for your LinkedIn. I'll show you guys that really, really quickly. Making sure that you take professional headshots. We want to make sure that even on LinkedIn, you're not giving me a selfie. It's not professional. It doesn't look good. It's not aesthetically pleasing for us. So making sure that you're taking time to go get some headshots. I know that some universities even have the ability for you, or colleges or schools, or so even in I just where I live, they have the ability where people do take free headshots. And so again, connect with me on LinkedIn, or if you connect with people, you'll be able to find these places where you can take free do free professional headshots, so that you can, obviously update that information. Updating your LinkedIn, okay? Stay engaged with being on LinkedIn. It's like being on Facebook and Instagram. You make it your business to be just as active on LinkedIn. Even though I don't have much to say on LinkedIn, every day I say, today's the day I'm gonna get my dream job. And it's funny because I say that every day, but because I'm engaging in that, I now have followers and people that are watching me see me get my dream job, right? So with that being the case, make sure you guys are being engaged on LinkedIn. You're commenting on your employer's thing. Oh, we just posted a new job. Oh, great. Thank you so much. I just applied for that role. I can't wait to connect with you. They want to see that. I want to see that as a recruiter, because that makes me believe that you're eager for the role and that you could potentially be a really, really great fit because you're eager and because you have the skill sets to be able to do that. And I could visibly see that you can provide that for the organization. Okay. And then of course, adding the organization to your LinkedIn. And then the most important gem here, you guys, if you don't take anything else away, be yourself. You cannot walk into these rooms thinking that you can be somebody else or be me, even just as somebody who's giving you these great gems. Don't be me. Don't be anybody else that you see on TikTok. Be authentically yourself. That's what we want to see. Now, given that you have to remind yourself that you're still going after a role, so it's good to be authentically yourself, but understand that we want to see these ambitious professionals who want the job, who want the role and can really contribute to the organization. And I think for me, what has gotten my foot in the door is my personality. I'm really, really engaging. I'm really funny. I love smiling. I love people. And so when I'm engaging with people, and because that's just who I am authentically and being myself, that's the thing that gets me 1 point over. That's the one thing that makes employers say, yeah, she's the one. She's the one. So be yourself. Even through this process, be yourself. Commit to being your best self. And I think that through that, you will be great at what you do and securing this dream job. I know this was a power course, but I know that if you guys have the opportunity to work on one-on-one with me, we can still obviously work on, building your personal brand and building who you are, but authentically just be yourself, be the best version of yourself. And that's showcased in any environment that you're in. And I would like to say thank you guys so much for this opportunity. Feel free to scan my QR code. You can add me on social media. Again, I'm very transparent, so feel free to add me on my Instagram, on my TikTok. You can email me. Feel free to call me. Let's set up a consultation so we can figure out your plan on beefing up your resume if you want to do some one-on-one work. I would love to help out, but in all, thank you guys again. And if you have any questions, I'm open for questions right now if you guys would like to.
I
But
love it. Let me get a couple things out there. This is amazing. Thank you, Michéla. There's a couple things that I want you to take away from this lesson besides this amazing, her energy. One, thumbs up for her energy, and it's a lot to talk about. A couple of things is you guys are already interviewing people on your own when you're hiring people to do all the work that you have for your personal selves, like to get your hair done, to hire a contractor, a gardener. You're interviewing them. So look at your social media as that gateway. If I want to go get my hair done, I'm looking at my hairstylist to say, hey, I like the way she does that person's hair. I love their pictures. Think of your social media as like that's already the gateway. So put presentations about yourself that people want to see you engaging, interacting, and also be willing to learn from others, especially the people who's worked there for a long period of time or younger generation of people who understand technology better or different, techniques here. Be willing to engage with people in that kind of like, retrospect. Like you're sitting there like, oh yeah, this is great. Could you show me how to do that? That's amazing. Give compliments where compliments are due. When you go into a work environment, you're constantly being interviewed while you're going through your first 3 to 6 months to a year of working for a particular company. So they're trying to see if you're still a good fit. So that probation period may be 2 weeks, it might be 3 months, it might be 6 months, it might be a year. Because when they come down to the downsizing, they're looking at like, who we're going to keep on there. I think I want to keep Michéla on because guess what? She's always a joy to have around. She's easy to get along with, and she's willing to pick up the pieces where, you know, people are slacking on it. She's jumping right in and helping. She's always learning easy. You know what? I just learned something new today. Thank you so much. She's giving compliments. Think about it, those things. And then take your time during the interview. Don't feel rushed. Don't feel rushed. Take a deep breath. Listen to the question. If you don't feel like you understood the question, how they posed it, ask them to give you an example of what
Yep.
they mean. That will give them talking about it a little bit better so that you can get, you know, understand the context. And, or you can say, in what context do you mean? If they ask you something specific related to yourself, you can ask a question in return like, this is very interesting. Would you like to hear from my personal experience or from my work professional experience? Because sometimes maybe they want to know more about you, and then how you apply that to the job. And then be prepared to show your work. Be prepared to show work. If you have a job that's both technical and, you know, hands-on plus, you know, or just office work, you better be prepared. Because if you don't, they're not gonna fully hire you. The second round of the interview or second part of the interview, maybe even that day, is come on, show me what you're talking about. Give me an example. Let me take you down to the job site. Could you code something real quick? Can you see what's the matter here? It might be a hidden little trap door there that you didn't even know it. For those people who are professionals, I always say, if you're studying to be a surgeon, I don't want a B+ surgeon. I want an A+++ working on myself. And I might necessarily ask what school they went to, but I can tell that they're really engaging by how they treat me as a patient. So you're treating every person out there, even the interviewer, the recruiter, as if they're one of your patients. Be very specific, detailed. Give them, you know, direct answers to whatever your questions they asked to you. So hopefully this is the beginning of your journey. You will get the copy of this recording within the week, and we look forward to having some more. We have some more coming up next week in March 4th. Look out for our website. You can easily go to www.thecollegeexpo.org to see more of our programming, all the things we do. If you look under programs, under internships and careers, you will see our How to Land a Dream Job series. And I'm going to give you guys a link so that you guys can fill it out. This is, excuse me, I'm going to give it to you real quick. It's a link that has all our, just the information about this this webinar. I would love for you guys to fill out this Google Doc to tell me your feedback so that we can stay abreast to your needs. And hopefully, if this is helpful for you, if you need, again, any other assistance, you can find me on social media under LinkedIn under Mrs. Denise Parker. Put the MRS dot Denise Parker, and you'll find me right away. I'm like the top one. Boom. So hopefully this is helpful for you. We'll stay on to answer any questions. If you have to leave, thank you for joining us.